within the FBI.
Having read this memo, I think it would be appropriate that the public has full view of it.
If you are interested in who paid for the dossier, then yes, you'll want the memo to come out.
While I'm on the subject of Dreamers, that plan is a campaign to make America white again.
We don't need that type of rhetoric on either side. The president has laid out a template, and we're going to work with it.
Oh, it was music's biggest night, but the 60th annual Grammy Awards wasted no time getting political.
He had a long-time fear of being poisoned. One reason why he liked to eat at McDonald's.
So wake me up when it's all over. When I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time.
Gotta wake you up before it's all over. We want to wake you up before it started. That's miscommunication amongst our singer. Well, we just showed the White House. Is that message supposed to be, okay, it's 6:01 White House, this is your wake-up call?
Hopefully
so.
not.
I don't know.
So. Well, lots of news going on down in Washington. We're actually heading down there today because the State of the Union address is going to be tomorrow night.
It will be. You'll see it.
And we told everyone we're coming.
So
get ready, Washington. Get ready. We're on our way.
That's right. Meanwhile, you'll be able to see it tomorrow night right here on the Fox News Channel. The President of the United States apparently stuck close to home. He was at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue working out of the State of the Union. We have talked in the past a little bit about some of the ideas going forward, and the White House has been very helpful. They have leaked the pillars of the State of the Union, and we're going to share them with you right now.
Yeah, they had a conference call, and a couple of things are going on. They got to have a much more bipartisan tone, and I think the president's going to be a little bit more modulated than usual, and there's going to be some points he's going to hit, but clearly the unscripted stuff the president thrives on, and which he got the highest grades on last time, with the guests he has in the audience.
We're going to be talking about jobs, the economy, infrastructure, immigration, trade, and lastly, national security.
That's right. Democrats have not really warmed much to the president nor his ideas regarding immigration because a number of the Democrats are going to be inviting people who are in the country illegally, also known as Dreamers, or people who would benefit from the DACA program. The White House also talked a little bit last week about the 4 pillars the president would like to see in an immigration plan going forward. We relayed them to you. To refresh, he wants $25 billion essentially to build the wall and for border security. He wants to get rid of the visa lottery, curb chain migration. That's where somebody in a family can pretty much invite everybody they've ever met into the United States of America. And of course, and this is the big one for the Democrats, rather than the 800,000 Dreamers that have been tagged in the past, he's saying we will make welcome 1.8 million Dreamers, which is great for the Democrats.
Well, that should make the Democrats happy. That should make the Dreamers that are invited very happy because it's more individuals, more Dreamers allowed to stay.
Great for Democrats and Republicans. And
you would think.
Yeah.
But Nancy Pelosi still had this message.
The president put forth a plan. That plan is a campaign to make America white again. They are changing the character of our country by what they are putting forth. They bring a tear to the eye of the Statue of Liberty, and they bring fear into the hearts of people who are here playing by the rules.
Now you know why so many Democrats fear that Nancy Pelosi is going to be the face of their party as they try to take back the House. And one of the greatest assets the Republicans could get is to tell everyone, listen, if you want to switch the balance of power, that's the type of attitude you're going to have at the leadership of the House. If that's okay with you, in the past it has not worked. Making Nancy Pelosi the face of the Democratic Party has blown up in a lot of Democrats' face. Senator Joe Manchin is one of those turned off by the rhetoric. And we always like to talk about the examples he gave. She gave a cartoon example on Friday, again, on top of a scapegoat. Let me explain to you what a scapegoat is.
Yeah, but just the fact that she said, make America white again.
Right.
That kind of rhetoric Joe Manchin didn't like.
Right. Here he is yesterday.
You know what? We don't need that type of rhetoric on either side, from Nancy, Paul Ryan, or anybody else. And I come down this. The president has laid out a template. We're going to look at that template, and we're going to work with it.
Well, good. That's what people want to hear. Rein in the rhetoric, according to Joe Manchin. According to people at the White House talking to the Wall Street Journal, they say that some of the things the president will stress is that we are a nation of immigrants, and as every nation has the right to control their own borders. He's going to also reframe the family-based migration thing. Rather than saying that we have the right to keep anybody out we want to, he's going to talk about the importance of the nuclear family, and if somebody comes into the country, the importance of a spouse or children. But, you know, the third uncle twice removed, probably not part of the big plan going forward.
But you know what the reason is? Is because if you're working on the first uncle twice removed, you're not helping the next family get their nuclear family in because you're focused on this one elongated admission policy. So move the nuclear family in a merit-based system to get America on the right track. That's part of the president's vision for where we're going and the reason why a lot of people elected.
Well, Democrats are using the fear-mongering, they're using the race card, when really this is all about just keeping America safe and making sure that terrorists don't come in and that that drugs aren't coming into our country and that the people that are here are paying their way so that you, hardworking Americans, don't have to pay for everyone.
Listen, on the editorial page of the Washington Post, they talk about if a deal is to be made, the Democrats should take it. But then again, they also, I believe in one part of the story of the editorial, that is to say, the column, they talk about how really it is amnesty, and rather than 1.8 million, they're talking about, I think, 10 or 11 million. So the Washington Post is saying, let's have amnesty for all the illegals in the country, which is a non-starter for the Republicans.
This is the way they should do it. The president, they said, Mr. President, what do you want to do? He laid out what do you want to do. Now negotiate on it. Ann Coulter is just as angry as Nancy Pelosi. Somewhere there's a middle ground. Meanwhile, last night, while you were getting your children to bed or doing something productive, the Grammys was on. And, of course, on the cold open, the late-night rhetoric against President Trump reared its ugly head as James Corden was tapped to host. And you know, if you watch his opening monologue, he goes out of his way with his British background to attack our president.
Well, he does. It was political. The big winner, we'll just give the headline, Bruno Mars, I think, won half a dozen Grammys.
Very talented.
Yeah.
Very talented. Meanwhile, we have a little montage of the...
All right, I did learn by watching them last night that I'm getting a little old because I didn't know who some of these people are anymore.
Well, you knew Bruno Mars.
I know Bruno Mars. I went to his concert this year. Yes, he's very, very talented. Kesha she hasn't been singing in a long time because she's in a court battle with her manager over the Me Too stuff, and she said she was assaulted sexually and verbally by this guy. So the judge wouldn't let her out of the contract. She sang "Praying," that song "Praying," that is so powerful. She stood on stage with a bunch of women and sang that, and it was pretty emotional. You should definitely Google that.
But if you did see, I think the second or third soundbite in that montage was of Hillary Clinton. What was she doing there? Well, James Corden, the host, was talking about how past presidents have won Grammys for their written book that was narrated, but they would need a narrator. So they had some auditions, and Hillary Clinton was one of the people who was auditioning. That did spark a lot of reaction on social media. Donald Trump Jr. tweeted this out. Getting to read a #fake news book excerpt at the Grammys seems like a great consolation prize for losing the presidency. #Grammy Awards.
Nikki Haley, ambassador to the UN, former governor of South Carolina, she didn't like it either. She said, "I have always loved the Grammys, but to have artists read the Fire and Fury book killed it. Don't ruin great music with trash. Some of us love music without the politics thrown in it." I thought the same thing. Every time there was something political, I just rolled my eyes. I mean, everyone knows what Hollywood thinks. It's a given. And you know, when you watch these award shows, you do want to just see the music. You don't want to. You don't want them to get into politics, and they always do. And I think it only just helps Donald Trump and his campaign and his base because people look at those millionaires who are complaining and they say they're not in touch with what's going on.
They're complaining because Donald Trump won. Basically, it would have been more interesting if she had picked up a copy of Shattered and read that out loud, or Clinton Cash.
Yeah.
That would have been a little bit more compelling. But to sit there and give that book, which has basically been proven to be a lot of crap and a lot of trash, to pick that book up like it's the Bible and read from it is ridiculous.
Well, that just shows you how desperate they are. That's the only book that they have they can hold up.
And as Meghan McCain brought up on The View the other day, she goes, why are we still crediting Michael Wolff, who indicated that Nikki Haley was having an affair with the President of the United States, which is totally made up. It says, how could you even take him seriously?
He insinuated that.
Yeah, insinuated that after that book came out, and she basically did a great job eviscerating it on the set of that show.
So anyway, big night for music here in New York City. It was political, but congratulations, Bruno Mars. We know you're watching.
More people are talking about the Super Bowl, though, than they are the Grammys. I know you're excited.
Yay, I'm so excited. And we will get to that, guys. But let's begin with some breaking news and a Fox News alert. Explosions and gunfire rock a military base in Afghanistan. ISIS now claiming responsibility for the attack that killed at least 11 soldiers and injured 16 others. The terror attack coming days after an ambulance packed with explosives killed more than 100 people in Kabul. The Taliban calling the attack a, quote, clear message to President Trump, who has been beefing up our military presence in Afghanistan. A hero shot in the line of duty has died. 25-year-old Detroit police officer Glenn Doss Jr. passing away 4 days after he was shot in the head, responding to a domestic violence call. Fellow officers, including his own father, calling the 2-year veteran one of the best.
He is truly what we call one of Detroit's finest. He is what we call American hero.
He loved the job, and he died doing something that he loved, and I can live with that.
Doss leaves behind a girlfriend and 9-month-old son. A GoFundMe page for his family has raised more than $30,000 so far. The mother of a teen brutally murdered by alleged MS-13 gang members will attend President Trump's State of the Union address tomorrow. Evelyn Rodriguez has also been invited to the White House to speak with President Trump before tomorrow's national address. She joined us on Fox and Friends back in July, talking about her 16-year-old daughter found beaten and stabbed to death in 2016.
We shouldn't be tolerating this type of behavior at all whatsoever. I mean, you know, he's a kids kidding, you know, kids.
Rodriguez calling the invite from the White House an honor. And as we mentioned, the New England Patriots are about to leave for the Super Bowl in Minneapolis. Brand new video from moments ago showing the crowd in Foxborough, Massachusetts, waiting to send off the defending champs. Their opponent, the Philadelphia Eagles, flew into town yesterday. Philly hoping to claim the first Super Bowl title ever. Meantime, in Philly, Eagles fans renaming Boston Market restaurants Philly Market. The name change happening at several locations throughout Pennsylvania. We take this stuff very seriously, guys.
Did they do that with the franchisees?
What was that?
Was that vandalism, or did they do it with the Boston Market people?
You know what? I don't know, but in Philly, it doesn't even matter. They just do what they want. Some of the bakeries have stopped selling Boston creams because they don't want anything to do with anything New England right now.
Is it true y'all have a prison in your stadium? Because people get riled up and they get...
I have never been there, so if we do, I can't confirm via personal experience.
Right.
But I've heard those stories.
All right. Thank you, Jilly.
Yep.
All right.
All right, the White House offering Democrats a path to citizenship for Dreamers, but Democrats, are they shutting it down? So is there any deal both sides will agree on? Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert, our friend, is live and walking up to the set.
Morning, plus, the game is on the line. A high school freshman takes...
At Farmers, we've seen almost everything.
Tomorrow night, President Trump is expected to outline his immigration framework, offering a path to citizenship for 1.8 million Dreamers, you can see on that bottom line right there, in exchange for $25 billion worth of border security and other visa measures, including a wall. So what kind of a deal can both sides ultimately agree on? Let's talk to Texas Republican Congressman Louis Gohmert. Joins us live here in the studio. Good morning, Congressman. All right, so far, what do you think of the president's offer?
Well, I mean, I think the president threw out there a much more generous offer than what President Obama had. I mean, he had 700,000 or so that were benefiting from DACA that was clearly unconstitutional. He'd said that over 20 times. And he offers to legalize several times more than that. And what do? They say that's not good enough. They expose that they're purely acting on politics.
They, the Democrats.
The Democrats, purely acting on politics. But, Steve, until the border is secured, any amnesty, any legalization that's offered just increases the numbers. I was visiting with...
It sounds like you're worried the wall would not be built.
Exactly. We learned... We should have learned in 86.
$25 billion for the wall. Why wouldn't it be built?
Well, if we get that money, but that's kind of a bait and switch, has been in the past by both some establishment Republicans and Democrats. But it's time to secure the border. If we get the border secured, then we will be able to work out things for those who are here, get rid of the gangbangers and all that. But until the border is secured, the Border Patrol are telling me the surge is back, and now families are coming in droves, bigger than ever.
Louis, it sounds like you don't trust the Democrats. It sounds like you feel like if they wind up with the DACA deal, And then they dangle, well, and we'll give you some money down the road someday. Maybe we might build that thing from Democrats. And you said some Republicans. That's your big worry.
We've been there. We've done that. 86 in the 90s, it was another bill. When Bush was president, oh, yeah, we're going to get the border secured. There was money, I think about $4 to $8 billion for a wall, a virtual wall in part.
Right.
None of that happened.
Sure. How about the House Freedom Caucus? Because I know there are a number of members who don't like the idea of amnesty, but if there's a 10-year pathway to citizenship, that's not exactly amnesty. Would you be for that?
And again, I've seen dead bodies. I've seen enough suffering that when we talk about amnesty, the Border Patrolmen say they immediately get a surge. Let's get the border secured, and then we can work. But every time, especially a conservative talks about legalization, you're luring more people in. I mean, the numbers are up. They dropped to nothing last year. Now they're back up bigger than ever because we're talking about amnesty.
Okay, you're talking about amnesty, and the Democrats, you say, are just basically obstructing, just trying to stop everything.
It's the president showed them for their insincerity. He dangles out there a big offer, which would probably result in millions getting legalization. And what do the Democrats do? They say, oh, that's not good enough. Well, it's several times better than what you had before, and it's still not good enough. So the president, brilliant. He showed for their insincerity. We need to get the border secure.
All right.
We got to.
Louis, thank you very much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
All right, coming up, a high school teacher and city councilman slams the military in his classroom.
They're not like high-level thinkers. They're not academic people. They're not intellectual people. They're the freaking lowest of our low.
Retired Marine Johnny Joey Jones lost both of his legs in a bomb blast in Afghanistan. He's going to join us with the message for that teacher coming up.
American Airlines. So why am I getting off?
He also said, would you like to get off? And she said yes.
I was obviously being sarcastic, man. Police eventually came on board to remove the woman and her sister. And the serial stowaway is back. Police arresting Marilyn Hartman at O'Hare International Airport after she refused to leave an area for private planes. This happening just 3 days after a judge ordered her to stay away from all Chicago airports. Hartman has been arrested, look at this, multiple times over the years for trying to board flights without a ticket.
If at first you don't succeed. Meanwhile, a high school teacher who is also a city councilman out in California caught slamming our military in the classroom on hidden video. Watch.
Think about the people who you know over there. Your freaking stupid Uncle Louie or whatever. They're dumb. They're not like...
A retired Marine Corps bomb technician who lost both his legs in a blast in Afghanistan. Johnny, I heard this. I'm outraged. What about you? He's talking about you.
Good morning, Brian. Yeah, I guess intellectuals and academics use four-letter words to describe people because they can't come up with a better vocabulary. If you watch that video in full, you'll hear multiple four-letter words for no other reason than he wants to be cool in front of 17-year-olds. So good for you, Mr. Salado or whatever your name is.
What goes through your mind knowing what you've been through? You lost both your legs. You sacrificed that for him. What goes through your mind when you hear stuff like this?
Well, to be clear, probably more so sacrifice that for the kids sitting in that classroom that will one day take over this country and continue the greatness that it is. For that guy specifically, if you do a quick Google search, you'll see he's kind of been like this his whole career. For 10 years, he's been a mayor, a city councilman, and a teacher. All three of those things are things I'm highly qualified for. He could never be a United States Marine, and that's where I started my career. So I think that speaks to the skill and education that we carry. About 90% of those in the military today have a high school education compared to less than 30% of Americans. I'm sorry, less than 60% of Americans. And then almost 90% of officers have a 4-year degree compared to less than 30% of civilian Americans. So we're pretty highly educated. And if you want to talk about skills, welding, air traffic control, building things with our hands, and oh, by the way, we can fight wars too. I think our education speaks for itself.
I think you're right about that. Apparently the teacher went off. One of the kids in the class was wearing a Marine sweatshirt or a T-shirt, and he saw it, and he just started that tirade. We understand everybody's got a political opinion, but when the guy who's your teacher in front of these 17-year-olds starts to lecture and browbeat the class into thinking that way about our U.S. military, ultimately, what does that do?
Listen, this guy lacks the three things that are basic to just a United States Marine: honor, courage, and commitment. In 4 days, I could have every kid in that classroom passing any test they need to take, not because I told them to, but because they believed they could and needed to. That's what leadership is, and that's what the military will teach you.
Right.
He's a teacher. He has none of that. He'll be lucky to get half those kids through his class. Unfortunately, that's what we're left with.
Superintendent did say that he would be disciplined. They couldn't get in touch with him over the weekend because he was out of town.
Well, according to news articles on Google, this guy was disciplined in 2010 and 2012, once for terroristic threats or threatening a child, another time for slapping a child. Apparently in 2005 there were complaints, so it isn't like the superintendent or principals didn't see this coming. He's an incendiary guy, and for whatever reason they keep him around.
Maybe the unions wouldn't let it do anything different. We'll find out. Meanwhile, there's one thing pretty consistent. If you put out a war movie and do a good job, the American people will come. Think about Lone Survivor, think about Hurt Locker, think about American Sniper, and now think about 12 Strong. 12 Strong is out, it's doing quite well, and The Intercept, which is an online magazine, says this. Look at this headline. It's time to wage war against war movies that glorify outdated models of masculinity. Where does that come from?
Well, if it's outdated, it's because we live in a cocoon in our society where we don't have to be masculine or anything in the warrior mindset to survive. There are two types of men in this world: the kind that go into battle like those in those movies, and the rest of us who rely on them to survive. Those are my heroes. We tell their stories because they need to be told. I can tell you, I was a bomb tech. I did over 100 bombs in Iraq and Afghanistan, over 100 in Afghanistan, and I can tell you that when it comes to telling a story, you can't begin to imagine the intensity of standing over a bomb when everything else around you is quiet, knowing your next move may kill you and the people around you or save you all. That type of intensity is hard to portray with sight and sound. If they have to jump on a horse and ride through a valley in a scene that may or may not have happened in the book or happened that way in order to portray that intensity, you know what? I give 100% on that. That's what American people need to see, and they need to understand the service and sacrifice of people like my friends Marcus Luttrell or Chris Pronto or Chris Kyle. These are American heroes who have sacrificed so much of their own life. They still sacrifice every day because of the freedoms that they believe in and we all share in. And to attack a movie telling their story, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, the American people already answered. They go to the box office when these movies come out. Thanks, Johnny.
Absolutely.
The numbers speak for themselves. Thank you so much. Thanks for your sacrifice. God bless you. That FISA surveillance abuse memo could be released sometime this week. Dan Bongino says it will expose the Democrats big time.
Plus, you have a thief steals a Marine flag right from a veteran's front yard, but they messed with the wrong house.
I just want to slap them upside the head. That's what they deserve, a good old beating.
Now that vet is fighting back. That story next.
That's why I'm telling you, I just want to celebrate, another day living, I just want to celebrate.
Was used, whether or not it's ever been vetted. If you are interested in who paid for the dossier, if you're interested in Christopher Steele's relationship with Hillary Clinton and the Democrat National Committee, then yes, you'll want the memo to come out.
He is talking about that 4-page memo. Later today, the House Intel Committee is going to have a vote at 5 o'clock this afternoon on whether or not to release it. Now, the Republicans hold a 13-9 advantage over the Democrats, so it will be released undoubtedly, then goes to the president, who will decide whether or not all of us get to see it.
And some U.S. senators, like Senator Lindsey Graham, says, you know what, maybe we should hold back on this. What does Dan Bongino think? He's a former NYPD officer, former Secret Service agent, host of the Dan Bongino Show. Dan, where is this heading, do you think?
Well, this is very, very damaging for the Democrats. Guys, don't you find it a little bit curious that the Democrats, who only seem to be interested in transparency when it comes to everything Donald Trump, are now doing everything in their power to bury this memo? I'm telling you, what's likely to be in this memo is an absolute exposing of the Democrat Party as supporters of police state spying. There's no two ways around it. And there's a critical question we have to ask ourselves going forward. What kind of republic do we want to be? Do you lose your constitutional rights? Does the Fourth Amendment not apply to you anymore when you're Donald Trump and you run for president? The abuse of the police state is likely to be heavy in this memo, and it's going to expose the Democrats for everything they've been for a very long time.
Dan, Our sources are telling us that people need to go to jail. When you who have read this memo, people who have read the memo said people need to go to jail. That's how damaging this is. That's how dangerous this is.
Ainsley, here's the problem here, what's likely to be in this memo here. If you are a citizen of the United States of America, you are guaranteed constitutional protections. They are not allowed to search your private property. They are not allowed to do it without accumulating enough evidence to put in a warrant in front of a judge. Even when it comes to FISA, there has to be probable cause you're acting on behalf of a foreign agent in violation of the law. Don't you find it a little odd that not one person can produce any evidence that any crime was committed at all, and yet the Trump team was spied on? Where are the liberals on this? I thought they were civil rights supporters, right? They marched for women's rights, for gay rights, for minority rights, but what, not for Donald Trump's rights as a U.S. citizen? This is a disturbing case, and it's going to make us all look in a mirror and ask ourselves that question. Well, what kind of country do we want to be going forward?
Dan, what do you make of the fact that the Department of Justice, which is run by, it's part of Donald Trump's administration, Department of Justice says, look, you cannot release it without us looking at it first because it would be extraordinarily reckless?
I think we have to be very careful here with the Department of Justice. Sessions has recused himself from Trump Russia. And, Steve, I'm not convinced here that Sessions and the OIG investigation, that they don't have some rather damning information, and there's not going to be a house cleaning coming up later. But here's the caveat. There are still a lot of slimy swamp rats left in justice who are going to be likely tainted by this memo and the spying scandal in the Obama administration. It doesn't surprise me that a category of swamp creatures would want to make this thing go away, or at a minimum take a look at it first so they can scrub it before the public gets to see it.
That's what's scary. They work for the Department of Justice.
Right, and also they're in charge of classified information. What's so significant is that Congressman Will Hurd, who used to be in the CIA, did it for over a decade. He says he is for releasing this memo. So he's seen it, he's assessed it, he knows intelligence, he knows classification, and says it should go out. The other thing that was brought up interesting by a congressman is it's not enough to release the memo. You have to put it, moor it to something to tell people where it came from. So you could put 10 great principles out there, but you got to tell us where it came from and where you sourced it from. So that could get a little bit complicated, don't you think?
Yes, and here's the issue here. Was the information, the source information for the memo, the intelligence, was this intelligence exclusively used, this is the critical question, to brief the White House and not brief Congress? That may be an explanation for the disparity here, why some congressmen haven't seen it and some have. Remember, Devin Nunes, guys, this is important. Nunes back in March went where to go look at this source information?
White House.
The White House complex. He did not go to the CIA. He did not go to the ODNI. He went to the White House. That should leave you all asking the critical question, was the White House only, Barack Obama's administration, briefed on this source intelligence? That should be setting off red flags everywhere.
Well, it could come out. It could come out later today. We don't know, but nonetheless, the vote is at 5. Dan, thank you very much for joining us today from Florida.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Jillian has the headlines for us.
Hey, good Monday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's get you caught up on some of your headlines, starting with this. The FBI releasing terrifying video of a young girl snatched off the street in broad daylight. Home surveillance capturing the scene in a neighborhood near Chicago. The child was walking home from school last month when the man grabbed her and put her into his red Ford Explorer. Police say he drove away and assaulted her before she got away. The suspect now behind bars and facing life in prison. Top secret military information exposed due to a popular fitness app and logs activity on Fitbits and other wearable devices that can be seen by anyone online. Among the locations, this base in Afghanistan. Soldiers located at bases in Djibouti and Syria also exposed through the app. A good old beating. That's what Vietnam veteran Ace Beam says a thief deserves for stealing a Marine flag from outside his North Carolina home.
They talk about the slap on the wrist. You ever heard that? Well, I just want to slap them upside the head. That's what they deserve. A good old beating.
That theft isn't stopping the 72-year-old. Beam says, "You imagine being that dude?" No. Seriously.
Is it a movie of the week yet?
Right, it should be.
Sadly, they got to finish out the season.
I know, but who cares? That's like it. Like for him, he's the
forever.
coolest kid in school.
Yep.
It'll live on YouTube. All right.
Yep.
Thanks, Jillian. All right, coming up, the president is getting ready for his first State of the Union address tomorrow night. So what should his message be to all of America? We're going to talk to former President George W. Bush's speechwriter, Bill McGurn. He is in the green room, and he is coming up next.
And politics taking center stage again on music's biggest night. But one Army veteran and mother says it's just more proof of Hollywood's hypocrisy. She joins us live.
Your freedom, not your people, not your neighbor, not your baby, not your equal.
We remember that this country was built by dreamers.
He had a long-time fear of being poisoned.
Example.
We will keep foremost in our hearts and minds not what is best for ourselves or for our party, but what is best for America.
We have got to work together if we want America to work.
In a world of change and hope and peril, our faith is sure, our resolve is firm, and our union is strong.
So, what message should President Trump send when he gives his first State of the Union address tomorrow? Here to discuss this is former chief speechwriter for George W. Bush, Main Street columnist himself from the Wall Street Journal, Fox News contributor, free pass to the green room anytime. Bill McGurn, welcome back, Bill.
Thank you.
So, the president stayed in town to work on this address. He knows it's matter. He has a chance to do this thing, staying on a roll after Davos.
Right.
What's the tone?
Well, look, the tone of a State of the Union, it's usually the president's agenda. He's trying to frame the rest of the year. And so usually a president lays out his agenda and then he makes trips to back it up and so forth going around. For example, if he mentions infrastructure, he might travel around to different places that need a new bridge or a new road or something like that.
Word is he's not doing that. He doesn't want to do that, and his staff is urging him to do that. You're saying take the theme on infrastructure, which will and go out, open for business, and go out.
Yeah, I think though with Donald Trump, you never know. I mean, every year speechwriters say the State of the Union is not going to be a laundry list, and every year it's
a laundry list,
except after war, like after Pearl Harbor or after 9/11. And most years it is because that's the nature of the beast. But Donald Trump's been different. And I think actually one of the underestimated strengths that he's had is in his set speeches. You know, the one that he recently gave in Davos, the one in Poland. They've gotten not a lot of attention, but he's he's done pretty well.
You know why? Because as this comes out, as somehow mysteriously there's something pops up about a Russia investigation or something about a past business, by the time he gets on the plane and come home, Donald Trump Jr. on the way back from Davos, we hear about the Mueller thing that happened in June that you're breaking in January.
Right. Yeah, look, he has a chance to this is the most sort of majestic setting for a presidential speech. You have the full Congress there, so the legislative and executive branch, usually some Supreme Court justices. So it's a tremendous setting for a president. For the same reason, it's a tremendous curse to be chosen to give the competing speech. And I think Donald Trump's going to offer the Democrats certain deals. They may not like the terms of all, immigration, infrastructure, and so forth. And one of the questions will be, can they take yes for an answer? And I think, you know, some of the people are boycotting. I'm not sure that's the kind of message you want to send to the American people.
Do you believe that Davos, in a way, was a trial run? He was approachable. He was open. He actually told Piers Morgan, you know, if I retweeted something that was from a bad group, I apologize. And now all of a sudden he's talking bipartisanship when he ticked off both sides with his 4 pillars of what I want an immigration for.
Right.
Could that be somewhat of a trial balloon?
It could be. I think it's partly him. I mean, if you look at the Davos speech, it's very natural. He's talking about the economy, talking about how what's good for America is good for the world.
Open for business.
Open for business. And, you know, it's a kind of Chamber of Commerce speech. The State of the Union deals with a little more foreign policy and so forth. But I thought that was a very natural speech for Donald Trump to give. And if you look at the comments the night before with some of the European business leaders, it's really quite extraordinary.
I mean, you've been there with President Bush, so I also think Ronald Reagan made it something that we look forward to, surprises in the audience. We know some Democrats are bringing some dreamers, but remember last time when the president gave his I'm the president now speech, he brought out the widow of Navy SEAL video William Ryan Owens. That was a great moment for everybody as we got a chance to salute him.
There's always a few, surprises like that ever since Ronald Reagan pointed to the gentleman that jumped in the river to save people after the plane crash. So there's always some of those surprises, but again, the president is trying to set his agenda, set the tone, and the tricks are you're trying as a speechwriter to make sure the other side has to stand up for your things.
That would be great. Bill McGurn, you have the preview. We'll get the review later in the week. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, 10 minutes before the top of the hour, the House Intel Committee set to meet today about releasing that FISA abuse memo. Will the public get to see it sometime this week? Why? House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy says it's so important to release the memo. He'll be joining us. And music's biggest star taking aim at President Trump, attacking him on everything from race to immigration. Army vet and mother Kathy Barnett says